Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Swallowed Star original continent based on novel. So let's start. Over 200 emperors they were all stunned, watching as Luo Feng simply left. None of them felt that it was a disgrace. Over their long lives, they had all experienced life or death situations many times, and they all had a certain set of rules. Maybe it was natural for them to want to steal the sacrificial tower treasure from a weaker warrior, that he wasn't fit to hold it. But that human earlier, was he weak? Heavy Arrow was in a coma, Blood Beast had fled, Purple Clock and 13 other emperors were all killed by his blade. This type of result, which of the 200 emperors here could do that? Powerful. Too strong. In that instant, 13 emperors fell, terrifying. Despicable Purple Clock. He even called us over before he died. He truly had evil plans. He knew that even Blood Beast and Heavy Arrow couldn't deal with this human, yet he called us over. He definitely deserved to die. Purple Clock deserved to die. The groups of emperors there all chatted. Luo Feng's performance earlier had truly subdued all of them, it made them respect him. Without a doubt, he was a true strong warrior, and for such an absolute warrior to hold the treasure was natural. If even such a warrior wasn't fit to hold the treasure, who amongst these over 200 emperors was? That human Yang, even though he seemed low profile, his strength definitely doesn't pale in comparison to an emperor limit. From now on, there's one more absolute warrior we should fear in this 27th battlefield, the human Yang. Does this human not have a title? We only know him as Yang. We've never heard of his title. Never heard. We've never heard either. His blade work was exquisite, each slash formed rivers that lasted for a long time. One slash alone resulted in one emperor falling, and the 13 slashes across the sky killed 13 emperors. From what I see, we should call him Blade River Emperor. Blade River Emperor. Not a bad name. The moment I hear that name, I recall what happened earlier. As the group of watching emperors discussed, they all agreed on a title for the human. Some warriors were given their titles from some superpowers during their official days or emperor days, however others were named through terrifying incidents or battle results that made everybody agree on a name together. Without a doubt, the latter kinds had more persuasive abilities. The battle for the sacrificial tower treasure thus came to an end, and the result of the battle ended with the title, Blade River Emperor. He had killed 14 emperors and put an emperor limit in a coma. He even chased Blood Beast Emperor away. Such a result made his title spread even faster. The automaton camp had their virtual world, within which the over 200 emperors had talked about him with their friends and described his strength. From 100 to 10,000s, and 10,000 to a million. The bug camp, human camp, the demon camp, everybody soon received news about it, and because the news was so terrifying, whoever heard it spread it even more. What? 14 emperors fell. Heavy Arrow is in a coma. That's an emperor limit. How did he lose so badly? Human Blade River Emperor. Blade River Emperor is too powerful. Is he that strong? And the one that managed to get away, Blood Beast Emperor naturally heard of the discussions in camp. This camp was the automaton base closest to Yangji continent, and the news naturally spread like wildfire here. He naturally became a stepping stone for Blade River Emperor's name to rise. The news of Blood Beast fleeing in fear spread fast. Scum. He grit his teeth. That human simply relied on the strongest flame god crystal. If he didn't have that, how could he deal with me? Scum, despicable scum. He howled within. He had also received calls from several friends along with mails, asking him about what happened. This made it hard for him to live. My undying body is severely damaged, losing 42%. If I continue here in the outer region wars, my enemies will definitely deal with me while I'm weak. It's time I return to the race and recuperate. Blood Beast took the base's travel points and headed back to automaton territory. Through a secluded area in the territory, he teleported via God Country. Within his vast God Country, a shrine floated within the highest peaks of the God Country, and suddenly a blinding blood-colored light lit up and engulfed the entire god country. The grass, flatlands, mountains, islands and other regions had countless single-eyed men and women that looked up at the light, after which they all knelt down excitedly. Trillions of such people shouted in worship in their own tongue, God! 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 A sea of shouts filled the entire god country. Within the core of the god country, within the shrine, Blood Beast sat in his throne and heard the calls from the countless people in his god country. He began to smile, as his mood started to brighten up. Sue! A distant beam of light flew over and more beams shot over, all entering the shrine. In an instant, 9 undyings stood within. These were all soul slaves, hence naturally they were completely loyal to him. However, only 2 of them were the same race as Blood Beast, the rest were of other races. 9 undyings, and only 1 emperor, the rest of them were officials. Master! The 9 of them bowed respectfully. From now on, I will stay in here for a long time. I'll appear after 100 million years, and my territory will be left to Ba Nuoer to take care of. His voice boomed within the over 10,000 kilometers tall shrine. Yes, master. A snake-head undying replied respectfully. Master, you injury. A single-eyed male said anxiously below. You can all leave. Blood Beast said solemnly. Yes. The 9 of them bowed respectfully and left, leaving only Blood Beast in his shrine. He was already calm now, muttering, Blade River Emperor. Even though he was enraged, he recognized how terrifying of an enemy Blade River was. To produce 2 strongest flame god crystals, even his own entire wealth wasn't enough to buy 2, and Blade River even managed to withstand the full blast. Just these 2 points alone made Blade River terrifying. You were nameless before. And now you've become renowned as I became your stepping stone. However, I know that an emperor capable of withstanding the strongest crystal blast definitely will achieve a lot more in the future. He muttered, unless I break through to become a knight, it will be hard for me to match you. I'll appear 100 million years later. Rumble. The shrine door closed and he began his long road to recovery. Actually, to a being like Blood Beast, they all had extremely long lifespans, just like True Yang. 100 million years was but a short portion of their life, and staying shut in for that amount of time was a very normal thing for them. Within the primal universe, Primal Chaos City, True Yang had always been observing Luo Feng's growth. When Yang unleashed his strength and killed 14 emperors, leaving Heavy Arrow comatose and Blood Beast fleeing, gaining himself the title Blade River Emperor, True Yang immediately found out through the countless races that were spreading the news. Unbelievable. Even though he used countless treasures, Luo Feng was still only a sector lord. How did he get so strong? Even a pinnacle emperor was killed by him, and an emperor limit was left in coma. True Yang was stunned. No matter what, Luo Feng was still a sector lord. Many treasures had harsh requirements to use. If one had insufficient strength, it was hard to unleash its strength. The general armor required 100 sector lords' strength in foundation to be used. Luo Feng had this because he had become a black warrior, trained in the Nameless Manual's 2nd volume and used beast god transformation. That was why he could use the general armor. It was obvious that even with treasure, it was still hard to raise one's strength that much. True Yang. A booming voice resounded within True Yang's mind. True Yang was shocked. He immediately replied respectfully, Primal Chaos City Leader. The news of Luo Feng being Blade River Emperor must be kept a complete secret. It cannot be spread. The booming voice resounded within his mind. Yes. Within the primal ruins, amidst the vast corpses all about, the city leader sat silently within. Even though Luo Feng relied on the flame god crystals, Famo poison, and Showu wings, he is still only sector lord, and he even used his earth body to do so much. Even though he paid attention to Luo Feng, he was still one of the pinnacle beings of humanity itself. Many important matters were handled by him, and many other even more critical problems were all solved by him. He at most occasionally checked in on Luo Feng. He was very clear. The universe was fair. How much strength could a sector lord unleash, even with a lot of treasures? Making an emperor limit fall into a coma, how hard was that? Is it linked to the Yangshan king armor? But the techniques used by the Yangshan race themselves are gone, and the requirements on the body alone are extremely harsh. Normally only low emperors can fully use the king armor. My disciple, can his earth body trigger the strength of the king armor? He said softly. Looks like I'll have to find time to talk to him properly. Blade River Emperor. Interesting. He is able to receive an emperor title at sector lord level. He then closed his eyes and stopped thinking about Luo Feng, as he had to focus on the predicament his true body was in. When the name of Blade River Emperor spread about, many emperors that Luo Feng had gotten close to immediately contacted him. They were incredibly passionate with their greetings. Luo Feng initially still dealt with them. I was forced to do so. Blood Beast and Heavy Arrow both wanted to kill me. I had no choice but to give my all. Hence it ended up like that. Luck, just luck. Ha ha, thanks. After dealing with some friends, he couldn't be bothered anymore and shut off his virtual universe reception. Within his internal world, a silver-armored Luo Feng stood at the peak of a mountain, looking at the few treasures that laid there. Those emperors had ancient robes, powerful weapons and seemingly special perfect armors, and some world and space rings. Luo Feng's gaze naturally landed on the ancient clock. Ancient clock. Luo Feng thought, I better examine this carefully. To examine this ancient clock, he sent his earth body into the internal world. As for outside, he let the golden horned beast with the Shogu wings lay hidden within a cave. In terms of strength, the beast was much stronger than his earth body, as it didn't fear any warriors outside. These words. The ancient clock had countless complex words on it. They were blocky letters, but not like any he had seen before. Barbata, do you recognize these words? He asked mentally. Barbata had frequently searched through the virtual universe network, and any language that Luo Feng could search for with his status had been completely memorized by Barbata. I know countless languages, yet I haven't seen this one before. Barbata replied. Ah. Luo Feng nodded and didn't ask anymore, and gathered his focus on the clock. It was about 3 meters tall, and had a diameter of close to 3 meters. There were also countless words on it. From the looks of it, these words seemed to have some relationship, almost like a formless thread weaved through them, forming peculiar engravings. I don't understand it. He shook his head. I'll first meld with it. He gently touched its body. A heat wave pulsed through him, almost like a soldering iron. He immediately sent spirit energy in. The ownerless clock swiftly absorbed the energy, and easily recognized Luo Feng as its new master. Rumble, its consciousness howled. An ancient message poured into Luo Feng's mind before it finally stopped. Battle technique, Demon Note Flame God Clock. Luo Feng frowned. A technique on how to use the clock pulsed through his mind, however all he got was the first level. Only when one had completed this first level would he be able to read the second level. However, the requirements for this first level alone were extremely harsh. It required one to comprehend the fire and space laws well to make progress. It's no wonder Purple Clock could control the force of the flame god crystal explosion that way to kill Gold Kang. He should have completed the first level. Luo Feng muttered. Just the requirements for the first level alone are so high. Looks like this is a treasure suitable for knights. Luo Feng's perspectives were incredibly high, like these items that were incredibly strong right from the beginning, which had harsh requirements too. Obviously it was suited for warriors to grow to knights before using hours. Fusion. Luo Feng tried fusing it into his body, but it seemed to be stopped at his skin level. The general armor imprint on his body shook violently. He frowned. With a thought, the silver armor vanished and he forced the general armor pearl out. At this point, he was only wearing the cloud contact armor. He tried fusing with the ancient clock again. In an instant, the clock melded into his body, into his muscles and organs, becoming one with him. So it's like that. He shook his head. This ancient clock is worthless to me, it's such a pity. The clock was indeed a true treasure. I could defuse 90% of soul and physical attacks. Its defensive abilities seemed to be on par with the general armor. Of course, the general armor gave him the strength of 10,000 sector lords. This was something the clock didn't have. However, the general armor had harsh requirements for usage too. Other humans couldn't even use it. But the ancient clock didn't have such problems in recognizing its owner. As long as one sent in his spirit imprint, that would do it. He had to admit that this was a true treasure. And a priceless one at that. But it was useless to him. Because defensive items had ultimately limited usage. For example, those that could meld with his skin meant that he could only wear one of these. It wasn't such that one warrior could simultaneously wear 10 to 100 armors. The general and soldier armor pearls melded into the muscles and organs etc. That meant he could only have one at a time. It was impossible for one to wear several king armors, general and soldier armors together. To wear another, he had to first force out the previous one. To meld with the ancient purple, he had to force the general armor pearl out. The logic was the same, similar defensive items couldn't work together. The general armor and the ancient clock, Luo Feng could only pick one at a time. He would naturally pick the general armor. This is definitely a treasure, one that is used by knights. He said softly. It's a pity that I have the general armor already. The golden horned beast even has the stronger king armor. These armors are better suited for me. Even though he was somewhat disappointed, he was still very happy, as this was still a true treasure. In terms of price it should far exceed the 560 billion, and he had another thought. Truyang had always been good to him, this may help him. Let's see my other rewards. Luo Feng instantly left the internal world and entered a world ring. A vast desert was within the world, and there lay a powerful undying body. Even in a comatose state, the formless pressure was still as terrifying. Heavy Arrow Emperor. He smiled and faced him. Back when you were heavily injured, you chose to self-destruct. If you did so, countless years later you may be revived, even though you'll have to pay a huge price. However, after becoming my slave, you'll never have that possibility. Back then you still had the hopes of fleeing. You didn't expect the 3 thorns of the cloud contact vine to pierce your body, forcing you into a comatose state. It was extremely rare for such a thing to happen. Heavy Arrow didn't expect the cloud contact vine to pierce his body and corrode his undying body, forcing him into a coma. From today on, you'll become my slave. Luo Feng looked at Heavy Arrow before him. NAD unleashed the 10,000 soul control technique. Unlike controlling the bug queen Alina before, even though she too was in a comatose state, that was a technique Hu Yangbo had used on her. The moment Luo Feng used his move, Alina awoke and began to resist. Heavy Arrow however was seriously injured, and he had lost his consciousness. Right now he was like a fish waiting to be sliced, with no resistance whatsoever. In an instant. Success. Luo Feng smiled. However, as he looked at Heavy Arrow lying there lifelessly, he frowned. Right, he had control over Heavy Arrow, but it did nothing to help his injuries. He was still in a comatose state from his injuries. Like this, Heavy Arrow was useless to him. I have to recover his strength and his undying body. Luo Feng pondered. There are many treasures in the universe that can help his recovery, but they are all extremely expensive. How much should I spend to recover this Emperor Limit slave? Is it worth it? However, this is an absolutely loyal slave, who is able to teleport. With him helping me, my exploration of the universe will be much more convenient. I'll first go research. He had killed 14 emperors in total this time. A few armors, weapons and treasures in world rings added to a lot. Like the silver armor purple clock war, this alone was worth 50 billion in the Hong Alliance city shops, as it was capable of diffusing 50% of physical attacks. 50% and 90%, it may seem small in difference. In truth, diffusing 50% allowed purple clock's defense to double. Diffusing 90% meant 10 times the defense. It was obvious that the ancient clock, general and king armor, these were all extremely priceless. The general and king armors could be used in many ways, and their prices were definitely shocking. Even so, the king armor was still only regarded as being worth 50 billion in the Hong Alliance treasure shop. Luo Feng spent 2 days through the virtual universe network and Hong Alliance before finally confirming the price of his goods. Heavy Arrow's wealth was worth about 60 billion mixed elements. Luo Feng took off his ring and forcefully broke into it to take his treasures. The wealth of the 13 emperors added together was about 50 billion mixed elements. Purple Clock's wealth was worth about 120 billion, not counting the ancient clock. In total, 230 billion mixed elements plus the ancient clock. It's still best to deal with powerful warriors like Purple Clock, as the rewards are much higher. Luo Feng muttered. After killing the normal emperors, 13 of them only gave me 50 billion, and it created such a fuss. The more I kill them, the more I'd attract the attention of the super beings. Humph. Purple Clock type of warriors are the best. However, these special encounters warriors usually have powerful trump cards. He thought, killing them is hard too. Like me, whoever kills me would truly strike it rich. But killing me wouldn't be that easy. He thought, if forced into a critical situation, I can call for the primal chaos city leader to save me. The moment he appears, anyone would be stunned. Seems right, the Showu wings are such a treasure. I only got it because he gave it to me. If it weren't a gift from such a super being, stealing it would only be a dream. Stealing the ancient clock was still possible. But the Showu wings? That was but a dream. If I have to let him appear, I would be too much of a failure. Luo Feng shook his head. What should I do now? How should I deal with these goods and the sleeping Heavy Arrow? Luo Feng had more problems now, but fortunate problems. Through Luo Feng's study on how to awaken and recover Heavy Arrow, he came to know of one good and one bad news. The good news was that even though Heavy Arrow was an Emperor limit, the level of Emperor limit was through body amplification techniques that rose his strength for an instant. The overall energy still didn't change, just like how the Golden Horned Beast uses deities of the world. However, the reason behind the strength growth was the shrinking of the body and increased density of muscles, etc. The comatose Heavy Arrow naturally had dispersed his amplification technique. His body now was at most a normal pinnacle emperor. Hence, to recover Heavy Arrow, or a pinnacle emperor, had no difference. The bad news was, there were 2 parts to his recovery, one was to awaken and the second was to recover. As long as he was awake, he would have his own consciousness, he could personally absorb the treasures and energy to recover, while asleep, he couldn't do it himself. Hence the amount of treasure needed was much more expensive. The awakening stage required 63 billion mixed elements. Even though it was simply raising his undying body from 12% to 20%, it was extremely expensive. The recovery stage required 58 billion. It may not seem like much, but an emperor limit's entire wealth was but about that much. They had accumulated that amount over countless years. Like Blood Beast, he would rather lock himself into train slowly over 100 million years than spend that amount. In space, the 26th camp. Bought. Luo Feng sat on the peak of the snow mountain and gritted his teeth. No matter what, this is an emperor limit. A living one has space to grow. With the resources that I provide, it would definitely be faster than his own training. He might get even stronger. In terms of strength, Heavy Arrow was stronger than Luo Feng. However, in terms of resources, he was an other race undying. How could he compare to Luo Feng of humanity? Luo Feng was the disciple of the primal chaos city leader. His resources were much more. Taking some and giving it to his soul slave would be plenty for his slave. The following days were spent buying and selling. Luckily, the dealings weren't as complex as when he had to sell the treasure from the sacrificial tower. It was much easier this time. Half a month later, 230 billion mixed elements. He spent about 120 on buying the materials required for Heavy Arrow to fully recover. He also spent another 30 billion on another strongest flame god crystal, leaving 80 billion plus the little left from the treasure from before. His cash was about 90 billion. He wasn't in a rush to use it. Whether it was strengthening deities of the world, or the cloud contact vine, or the 1000 vine star-eating plant, this amount was far from enough. Luo Feng sighed. A plant life form and automaton weapons etc., these all rely heavily on countless treasures, and the countless treasures, require huge amounts of wealth. 1 month after Blade River Emperor got famous, within a world ring. A nutrition cabin built according to Blade River's specifications, 10 long and 4 wide, lay on the sand. Black-clothed Luo Feng looked at the sleeping Heavy Arrow beside him and used his world energy to drag him into the cabin. Luo Feng gently pressed the button. A transparent cover on the surface automatically closed, simultaneously releasing a large amount of liquid and materials within. Many were broken down fragments and placed within the liquid. The most expensive was 1 Sanjin Bo Luo leaf. This leaf alone took up 50 billion of the total amount of 63 billion. The liquid engulfed Heavy Arrow. As the mysterious energy seeped into his body, the liquid began to bubble and boil about. It's begun. Luo Feng muttered softly. Heavy Arrow, if you didn't become my slave, you'd probably sleep for countless years. Luo Feng looked at the cabin and smiled. Of course, if given the choice, you probably wouldn't choose to become my slave. No matter how weak you are, it's still your own. No matter how strong a slave is, he's still a slave. It can't be helped. This is the rule of the strong. You were forced by me into a coma. Who can you blame? You can only blame your own lack of strength. Minutes and seconds passed. The liquid within began to grow dim. About 3 days later, Luo Feng, who had been standing beside all the while, could feel a ripple of consciousness from his slave. Almost. Luo Feng smiled. The moment that ripple was there, it only took another hour for Heavy Arrow to regain consciousness. Hula! The liquid in the cabin instantly became clear, as the treasures within were swallowed immediately. The transparent cabin opened. Heavy Arrow jumped out onto the sand, looking at Luo Feng. He couldn't help but exclaim, 1 moment's folly and I've become an eternal slave. However, for Master to use such valuable treasures to awaken me, he must be a good master. With control on his soul, Heavy Arrow naturally had a good impression of Luo Feng, filled with worship. He sensed that he was now a slave and being controlled. However, he had no sense of disobedience at all. The control worked on the very essence of the soul. He naturally regarded his master as good and obeyed him. This was a soul slave. From the soul, he was an absolutely loyal slave. Unlike the microchip-controlled slaves, even though they were controlled, they were still unhappy from within, wanting to change their fates. A soul slave never had that possibility. Master. Heavy Arrow bowed respectfully. Luo Feng looked at him. A black armor appeared on Heavy Arrow along with a mask. He was over 8 meters tall. Even though he bowed extremely low, it was still like talking to a 3-story tall giant. It didn't feel good. Shrink to my height. Luo Feng said. Yes, master. Heavy Arrow immediately shrank, quickly changing to 1.7 meter. He bowed almost like a butler. Luo Feng nodded. An undying could easily change his size, however it would affect their strength. The original size was the optimum size. Heavy Arrow would lose 30% of his strength by shrinking so much. Stay this way normally, only return to your original form during battle. Luo Feng said. Yes, master. Heavy Arrow replied respectfully, however I just awoke, and my undying body isn't even at 20%, my strength is greatly affected. Later, I will help you recover your full strength quickly. Luo Feng flipped his hand and immediately an ancient clock appeared in mid-air, landing on the sand. Heavy Arrow looked at it, his eyes gleaming. The powerful energy emanating from it would make anybody turn. Luo Feng smiled. That's a true treasure. Heavy Arrow was excited. Such a treasure was normally used by knights. To emperors, very few actually had such a treasure. Give it a shot. Luo Feng smiled. He had already gotten rid of the spirit imprint on it before. It was currently without a master. Even though in his plan, he had wanted to help his teacher Tru Yang, seeing if it was suitable for him, that was something for when he returned to Primal Chaos City. It was best to pass it to Heavy Arrow first. And the ancient clock was suited for a warrior proficient in fire and space laws. His teacher Tru Yang was proficient in ground and space. It was hard to tell if it would be useful to him. Yes. Heavy Arrow was very excited. He rubbed the clock and left his spirit imprint. The clock entered his body and a faint clock silhouette appeared on the surface of his skin, hiding itself after. Heavy Arrow's eyes seemed worried. Master. He said respectfully, this ancient clock has to be triggered by one proficient in fire and space laws. And I relied on the ground laws to become undying, even though I have some comprehension of the fire laws, it's not much. Ah? Luo Feng looked at him. Heavy Arrow said nervously, however I did get recognized by the fire laws too, even though after reaching undying, my body has already become part of the ground laws and it's hard to comprehend others. I still ultimately have been recognized for the fire laws, there's still some hope. Ha ha. Luo Feng smiled, I'll let you use it for now, even if you are unable to use its other abilities, just its defense is extremely powerful. Hurry and comprehend more of the fire law. These are the treasures you need to recover. Luo Feng casually tossed out a space ring at him. After Heavy Arrow received it and checked, he was extremely gleeful, thank you master. Hurry and regain your strength. I'll need your help in exploring the dangerous regions of the universe. Luo Feng smiled. At Sector Lord level, every law was easy and close. At Undying, the soul had already become part of the body, this was formed by undying energy and the law energies were a part of it. For example, if one used the ground laws to become undying, trying to study the other fire, water, light or wind laws after would be extremely hard, millions of times harder. Of course there were exceptions. If one had gotten recognized by the laws early on, there would be no backlash, it would simply be as hard. Also, the 5 basic laws added to one law above, the space law. One could comprehend all 5 laws to become undying before studying the space law, even though there would be some backlash. There was a possibility of it still happening, only it was much harder than at Sector Lord level. Wind, thunder and light could also be used to study the time law. If one had studied the wind law, but wanted to study the space law after, it was possible at Sector Lord level, however once he reached undying, it was impossible. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye and Heavy Arrow regained his full strength, returning to his optimum strength. This video will end here.